going to wrap up our study here. Kind of sad, but all good things must come to an end. Hey, Brian. Get my screen mirroring up.
No, it don't come to an end now. This is when we take this information and run with it.
Well, yeah.
That's right.
Well, I felt with the ones that we watched for today, basically he was selling his book. It's like,
Mhm.
and if you go to chapter so-and-so in my book, you will see the rest of them.
Yeah, and he delves into it a lot, which I get, right? I mean, you've only got so many minutes on your video. And I do have his book, and I've kind of gleaned some excerpts from it to share with y'all. So in this last session, what Gary was trying to wrap up is what I think of as kind of like the most common objections or obstacles that people have. And I think that it's good to be aware of these things as we go out, right, and we interact with people, and maybe people we don't know or whatever. It's always handy to have, like, you know, to be able to answer like just the top 10 questions that come across, because those top 10 questions will answer like 80% of the question, right? Because people have duplicates all the same. One of the top questions is, why does God allow suffering in the world? Right? That's a common question that I get all the time. I mean, you got to have an answer for that. Why do you believe in Christ? That's another answer. So what he's done is he's kind of taken that idea and broken it down into the most common paths that people take. Now, this isn't to say that it's for everybody, all right? We're talking in generalities, but the most common paths. And while my screen comes up, I did take some notes, and this is from his book. And he goes through like 8 specific paths in there, and I think I got 7. So one of the first paths that he sees is from what he calls God accusers. And so these are people that are accusing God of things. God, why did you take my mom? God, why did you allow this to happen? God, why did you allow that to happen? And when we recognize like this pattern, right, what we're really seeing is that they have a very limited view of God. God, they can't understand that there may be reasons outside of our knowledge why God may allow things to happen or why things should happen. For example, we was watching a TV show, and they're renovating this hotel on this island, and it's crazy. It's a crazy project. But during this renovation, a hurricane comes, and some of the workers there, lost family members. And so the question, well, God, why did you allow this to happen? Now, we don't know. We have to be honest with ourselves. We cannot know. But we're comfortable with that because we understand that God, being all-knowing, all-powerful, has reasons that are outside of our knowledge. Now, the difficulty is explaining that to somebody because, why would he take your mom or your dad or whatever? That's a difficult question to answer. And especially if there's emotion, there's like a level of emotion there, right, that you have to get through. Because you may have a wonderful, well thought out, logical answer that doesn't relate to the emotional needs at all. And again, this is why we're building ourselves up. We're having a seat at the table to be allowed to have this conversation. Because you don't have these types of conversations with strangers, right? So that's one path, right? And when that has its own difficulties. Another path that he lists in the book is what he calls cultural Christians. People who call themselves Christians, but really are no different than the world. And I find these people especially difficult to reach because they think they're saved. And yet their faith is in all the wrong reasons, right? When the housing crisis came and you have all these cultural Christians and then they lost all their wealth, right? they flipped out, right? And that's a bad place to be. And we know that our security is not in wealth or possessions or anything like that. And so to reach out to those people, where are you putting your faith? Where does your actions say that you are versus your words? Right? And to call people out like that is a hard call. It's a hard call for people to get. And nobody likes being called out, but at the same time, if you have a seat at this table with this person, you can be honest with them and say, you're saying this, but really everything from your outward appearance is showing this. And you have to be honest with yourself where you're at. Right?
What people don't realize when they start blaming God for what's going on, they don't stop to consider what they might have did themselves to bring to what happened or anything like that. I mean, we're looking for everybody to blame these days for the troubles we're going through, what's happening here, what's happening there.
Mm-hmm.
And I find more people are blaming God for this. Well, why is God allowing this to happen? But what do they do? And then when they go to telling me, and he say, well, you get into it, you read, you find out what's going on. You read the Bible, you find out what's coming in the end times. You see what's
Yeah.
happening here and what's going to happen. I can't read all that. Well, they're sitting there with a problem that's, they say they would like to have Jesus and they can't come to church or something like that because they're not perfect. And I said, nobody's perfect but one.
Yeah.
And if we need him to guide us.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We need somebody to look up to see where we're making our mistakes.
Okay. And what would that, really looking deeper at that problem, that person, I can't come to church because I'm not perfect, right? They could be making an excuse, right? They could just be completely misunderstanding Christianity, right? And this is where your role as,
I've been there.
right, a friend is trying to discern where exactly are they at and then correct it,
I've
right?
been there.
Yeah.
But you're searching for answers to your questions of why this is happening and what's going on there.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, there are some blame games going on,
Oh, a lot of them.
but we're talking about generalities here.
Generality and everything.
I mean, some people just won't accept personal responsibility. But then again, that's a deeper issue. So the next one that he has is self-fulfillment people. People that are always trying to find themselves or better themselves. We can see this a lot. We have self-help books sections in the books, right? And, it's admirable, right? We all want to improve ourselves and get better, but at the same time, it's not going to go very far, right? From the Christian standpoint, because at the end of the day, without God, you're dead, right? So, where do these people, they're looking for something, right? We can see something there. They're trying to improve themselves. What are they looking for? And I find these people actually a little bit easier to reach because they're already looking for something. They're just looking in the wrong places, right?
A lot of them, most of them don't even know what they're looking for.
Yeah.
They're just trying to fill that void.
Yeah, they sense something's there, but they're looking, and I find that much easier to reach than, say, the cultural Christians.
I have a younger sister, about 5 years younger,
Mm-hmm.
and she sent me a book. She's reading it. It said, "Who Made God?"
Mm-hmm.
What's the guy's name?
Robbie Zacharias.
Yeah. And I started the first chapter, and it is all about philosophy and science,
Yeah.
beginning and no ending. And I said, and she calls me, and I said, "I haven't even started on the chapters yet. I'm trying to learn his mind when he wrote the book."
Yeah.
How
Good
he-
luck with that, Robbie's pretty deep.
Yeah.
He's
Yeah.
really neat.
Yeah.
It'd be how, it's just
Fascinating
about-
to listen to, though.
Yeah, nobody made God.
Yeah. God's eternal.
Nobody made
But
God.
that-
It's true.
That's a deep logical thought process, which I love. Like personally, I resonate at that level. But
I
some
write my
people,
little notes because I don't want to forget.
yeah, but some people don't resonate at that level, or they operate on like a more emotional, feel, gut kind of feeling, and that's okay too. There's room for both, and that's I have to switch gears and be like, okay, if they're coming from this angle, I've really got to change my mindset. It's not my forte, if you will. And that's okay. I mean, that's the way God made me.
Yeah, I gotta go back and read another paragraph that I done read. I went, wait a minute, what did he say?
Mhm.
Each paragraph relates to whatever he said, and I'm
Mhm.
like, it's mind-boggling.
Yeah, and you know, in his mind, he's laying it out in a logical fashion. Boom, boom, setting it up. Boom. Yeah. So that's cool.
And
And
the search for requests to get lost, even for, they're not getting their answers.
yeah,
They're not getting the answers to what they really want to know. So they're gonna keep seeking for something like that. My chances are here.
yeah. Well, there's nothing wrong with seeking.
You're
I
trying to
mean,
explain to somebody how something got made. You look at everything around. Somebody had to make it. Somebody had to invent it. There's the thinker.
but think about this: if you don't have a godly worldview, right, or if you don't want to have a godly worldview, two different things, then you search for the eternal, because if there is a God, then that means you're in deep doo-doo, as they say, right? You've got some real if there is a God, then you know your life choices have real consequences.
Well, I saw one time, I forget where I read this, it said, eternity is a really long time to be wrong.
Yes, it is. It is. And you know, nobody wants to be wrong in eternity. But, you know, if people have this phenomenal ability to justify whatever they want,
That's true.
and you know, they will go around logic to get there. And
They'll create their own logic.
it's amazing to me, and I've seen it all the time. Like, it's really smart people, until they get to this one area where they're trying to justify these things. And that's what I love about Christianity is everything to me is logically consistent. Your sin, you've committed sin. The wages for sin is death. Like, it's very simple, right? I like that. Like, it's not a great answer for me, right, as a sinner, but it's consistent.
It is cut and dry.
It's very consistent, and you don't have to be a genius to understand it. And then the good news, right, the gospel is, hey, you know, God understood this from the beginning, and he set up this plan, and the only person that could fulfill your sin debt is someone who's perfect. Well, the only person that's perfect is God himself, right? And to me, this all makes sense.
Everybody wants everything to happen within a minute. It's not happening now, they're impatient.
You have to have that spirit in your heart before anything can even make sense to you.
Yeah, and
You have to. And so many people, that's that self-fulfillment. They don't know how to do that.
yeah, and we're getting there. So one of the fourth one that he lists is what he calls the goody-goodies. And these are people straight out of the Bible, right? The rich young ruler. I've done everything right, right? You met these people. I've kept the law since my youth, right? Classic biblical example. They don't understand what sin really is. And they don't understand that they've really committed it. That's what they don't understand. They're like, well, you know, I went to church every Sunday and every Wednesday, and I did this and I did that, and I gave and I worked, and they're totally misunderstanding the point. Right? You can't work your way to heaven. And these type of people are just really, honestly, confused, right? Because they're not getting it. They're trying to work their way to heaven, and it's not going to fly. Because you can't. There's nothing you can do. And for these people, it's more of a worldview shift. And this is a radical shift for them. Because imagine meeting somebody in their 20s, 30s, who still have this idea in their mind that, well, I'm good, and so everything's going to be right. Well, if something bad happens to them, like, it really shakes their faith, so to speak, right? Because then it's like, I've done everything right? And then it comes back to the God accusers, right? I did everything right. God, why would you do this to me? Right? And then as a second point, it's just incorrect. It's just confused, right? Because you can't work your way to heaven. And for these people, it's really to change a worldview is to ask the big questions: is what in your works is going to get you to heaven? And go through that conversation, because they'll be like, well, I serve the poor, I serve the needy, and all good things. But at the same time, does that erase your sin debt? And you can come back to, well, have you committed any sin? Some people say no. And I'll tell you, they just don't understand what sin is, right?
Nobody wants to live a Job life.
Yeah.
You read Job, you don't want to live it.
Yeah.
But sometimes people ask, what keeps you going? I said, I'm still looking for my Job 42.
Mm.
I said, what do you mean Job 42? The last chapter of Job, he gets everything returned to him like he's had it all taken away.
Yeah.
And I said, one day it's all going to be mine again. I may not get it here, but I'm going to get it where I'm going.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's a life.
Yeah. And then,
You can't sit there like Job, and Job didn't blame God, and he didn't blame his friends.
sometimes things happen for reasons that we can't understand. Job, I'm sure everybody goes through this, thinking these things, and it's okay to explore these thoughts, right? We can maybe come up with some potential ideas, but we'll never know what specifically God was trying to accomplish during these things. But you could come up with some ideas, maybe.
If you don't ask questions, why are you looking for an answer?
Yeah. And sometimes you just got to be, simple about it. Is there something that God is trying to get your attention on, which is people don't want to accept because they think that they were already this close to God, and they're not. Usually when you think that way, you're pretty far from God. The fifth one that he lists is the progressives, and these are people that raised up in the current culture. They look at Christianity and Christianity had slavery in it and is anti-feminist and treats the poor wrong and all these things, whereas in reality they just don't understand how the Bible works. Every time we look in the Bible and we see slavery, it's not an example of this is the way it should be, right? Sometimes the Bible has things in there the way things shouldn't be in order to contrast the way things should be. Now we, going through Sunday school and studying the Bible and how it's come together, we understand these things. But people looking at it superficially and just from what they've heard and what they've seen, they just don't understand. Yeah, there's been some terrible things against women, men, slaves, all kinds of things. Incest, right? Just because it's in the Bible doesn't mean that this is what we should do. Sometimes an example of what not we should do. And so this really, for these people, is really they have a false idea of Christianity. They don't have what is Christianity? Because it turns out Jesus was all about these things, helping the poor, right? Jesus gave some great recognition of women in his ministry that would be totally revolutionary against the day. All kinds of Jesus was very progressive if you really think about it. And so for these people, it's really more of showing them the true identity of Jesus. Be like, well, you say this, but Jesus clearly says this. And these people are the same people that look at some of the more wealthy TV evangelists and they see, the wealth on display and you hear about their mansions and stuff. And, well, that's Christianity. Well, no, because Jesus says he didn't have a place to sleep, right? And so you have to point this out to these people and say, I know what you think, but written down, right? It's been handed across generations, this is what Jesus was really like. And then they can make, their call.
There's one thing that's helping some we get with Christianity is what's going on with people and things starting to repeat itself. Things that they've tried that didn't work, and people are realizing this and have memories of what's going on. They've tried this before, it didn't work. What's going on? Things start repeating itself so long.
Mm-hmm.
They try one thing, it didn't work, and wait, skip 10 years, 20 years, try it again.
Yeah.
And it doesn't work. And
Yeah.
they say, why is this not working? What's going on with it? If it's not corrected to start with, it's going to continue, keep going that way.
Mm-hmm.
And, everybody thinks they got a better idea of how to put an old habit in good shape,
Yeah.
So, when they're getting on this,
Yeah.
yeah,
I mean, people have tried,
they're looking at similarities,
And I understand this, and people always want to invent a better mousetrap, right? And who doesn't, really? Like, I want to be more efficient, and, you could think of, this goes for political reasons, this goes for religious reasons, this goes for your personal reasons, right? And so we want to, I get it, right? We want to be more efficient, we want to eke out that extra, savings of effort or whatever. But at some point, sometimes just the best way to do it is the best way we have been doing it. Now, you have to make that decision because that's not always true, right? Sometimes there is a better mousetrap, and that's where life comes in. It's experience, right? I mean,
You were talking about the examples in the Bible. I was just sitting here thinking about that. I'm not sure, because I'm sure somebody's got it documented somewhere, but most of the prominent stories we know about in the Bible talk about stuff you shouldn't do.
Mhm.
Whether it be King David, whether it be the woman at the well, Joseph's brothers selling him into slavery.
Yeah.
Every one of those is examples of people doing what they ought not do.
yeah. I mean, the whole Bible, if you think about it, big picture, is people bad, God good, right? That at the end of the day, and so, when you think about it, you want to follow your way? Okay, Bible,
Here's how
let's
it's-
look and
here's
see.
how it's gonna go.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's the whole point of the Bible, right? To show you, it's a contrast between man and God. Man, bad, God good, in very, very simple terms, right? David, described as a man after God's own heart.
Yeah.
Great guy. I mean, seemingly, except for this whole thing with Bathsheba, right? What is that trying to say? Big picture. Temptation. Even the best men fall to sin, right?
And you gotta forever keep your guard up.
Yeah, and you got to avoid temptation because we're all susceptible to it. Yeah. So, big picture. Now, people don't understand that. They're like, because they come into it with these preconceived notions, and we have to understand that about other people. We're here, right? We're delving into the Word. We're learning. We're going through teachings and looking at other people's concepts but other people, they're just hearing like hearsay, third party, and what they want it to say because they have an axe to grind or something. Or maybe there's an emotional level. We don't know, and we shouldn't assume anything until we hear them. But we know people are coming in like that, and how do we reach them? Once we identify where they're at, then we can meet them where they're at and kind of walk with them towards the truth, towards Christ. That's the whole point of this.
We believe in preventive maintenance for our vehicles, our machinery, but for ourselves, where do we get our maintenance from? Where do we tune ourselves up, get refreshed, and find out what track we need to get on?
Yeah.
I tell everybody that, you gotta get preventive maintenance. If you let something go down, it's gonna end. You start doing it, you push yourself over there where you shouldn't be, things are gonna creep.
Yeah. I mean, if you hang around with dogs, you get fleas,
Yep.
right? Those are,
If you go
I mean,
into that,
a good way to reach people is to turn the world against them and show them, hey, the world says this, right? Well, that seems awfully close to this biblical concept, right? You know, what do you think of that? And, you know, that gets people's juices flowing, like, oh, you know, they're making connections.
I have a hard time trying to figure out what other person wants,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Yeah.
Because they act different, but what do they want?
Yeah.
You know, that's hard to penetrate.
Finding people's motivations is key. And it's hard. And you may not know because they'll put off like distractions to kind of get you away.
Well, that's why you have to build that relationship.
Yeah.
You know,
You build that
Get
relationship.
into that circle to find out.
Yeah, because they start to shed some of these false, you know, or masks that they put on. And then you could really see, well, they're really upset about, you know, the passing of their father at 18 or, you know, whatever it is, or the abuse that they had encountered. Or maybe they're just, you know, they don't.
How do you kill the snake? That's what I want to know.
Yeah, yeah. So all kinds of different things.
Yeah.
And then the last three that Gary brings up in the book is like specific instances of the path for atheist, the path for, I guess what you would call like theist but not Christian, and then the path for
Called it agnostic, didn't
agnostic.
That's what I've heard.
Yeah, it's kind of agnostic, or maybe, I guess the difference for me is like they believe in a higher power, they're just not sure what it is. And I guess that is kind of agnostic to a point.
I think they worship the moon and the stars and the plants and the earth and the dirt.
Yeah, I mean,
That kind of
and
thing.
so,
That's not what.
yeah, they've taken polls about this, you know, if you've seen the surveys, you know, so many people call themselves atheists, but the vast majority of people still call themselves, they say that they believe in a higher power, whatever that may mean to them. But the vast, and it's like well into the 80%. Now we would be included in that, because imagine like you're filling out a survey and it says, do you believe in a higher power or don't you? Right? We would say yes, we just know our higher power as God. And then the next question would be like, if you answered yes to this question, what would you say you are? Christian, deist, Buddhist, Islam, you know. And that's how all these surveys really flow out. And so the path for the atheist is going to be very different than the path from somebody that's coming from a completely different religion. Say Hindu, right? They believe in a higher power, so we're not at the atheist level, right? At the same time, their idea of a higher power is radically different than ours. And so these paths are going to be very different. And if you're not familiar with either of these, you know, build up that relationship, but you may have to do some homework. You may have to go read up on, well, what do Hindus believe? And then, you know, ask them, hey, I was reading about Hinduism. It says you believe this. Is that correct? And you can go deeper down that discussion path.
Yeah,
Good.
I have a niece that lives in Tennessee, and she's pagan.
Pagan?
And I had to look it up. I had to check
That's
it
old
out.
school.
That's all, but she celebrates not Christmas, but pagan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, solstice and all that
Yeah,
stuff.
soul searching and all that stuff. I sent her Christmas cards with religion, with the picture of Jesus being born. I
Mhm.
don't care what she believes in, I just want her to know what I believe in all the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
That's all I can do is, I can't reach out to her about stuff like that.
Yeah.
I don't buy holiday cards, I just do Merry Christmas,
Mhm.
as a nice, church.
Well, that's just what she's doing now. A few years ago, she was claiming she was a witch, so.
Okay.
Witchcraft stuff.
And so, you know, these,
Potions and herbs, and it's not a bad, she's not a bad witch.
and we think of this and we're like, you know, what's going on? But
I don't know them kind of people.
obviously she's looking for something, right? And she's changed, right? So she's not.
But she's raised all of her children that way, and it's sad.
It is. It is.
Very sad.
But these are the same kind of people that we're reaching, and we're finding out that they're in our own families.
And most of
Right.
the time, they're in their own little world, they don't bother you. She
Yeah.
doesn't bother me, she don't contact me, she don't go out.
Yeah, they're not.
They know they're different.
Yeah, they know they're different.
They're not hurting.
But at the same
She's not
time,
hurting anybody.
we believe that, you know, there's an eternal price to pay for this, right? And we want to reach out to them through love.
I just know in my heart where she's going, and if something happens to her, and it's just so sad.
Well, and it could happen today, right? And then, I don't want you to think the rest of your life, well, I could have, I should have, because that's hard to live with, and this is, why we try. You may not be successful, but at least at the end of the day, you can say, I tried, right? And that, to me, gives me a lot of peace. I tried. God, I tried. Like, I don't know what else to do. But if you didn't try,
She'll videotape things that she's done, like potion, not potions, but something that will help your hair grow or something. She's self-centered anyway.
Mhm.
In the background, there's a picture of the devil and an angel hovering over each other. I was like, gosh, that's
I'm
terrible.
sorry. Yeah, well, it's
It's just terrible.
because if you explore different world religions, right? This example, you could go back to Eastern religions. This idea of yin and yang, right? That there's balance, good balances with evil, right? Whereas the Christian worldview is completely different. There is no balance. Good wins, period. But that's a completely different worldview that we have to kind of get our minds into. And it's more common. I wouldn't be surprised if you find some of that around here.
But people start with the herbs and the things like that. It's mentioned in the Bible, God gave us every herb, plant, and seed for our bodies, for our nourishment.
Mhm.
And you tell people this end all that this is where it came from. I mean, really.
And that may be a good thing is to,
Tree of life.
where did
And
these,
it's in heaven now,
All
there's,
we can do is make ourselves an example.
yeah, there's not really like one way, right? You may have to try different ways. But this is where, you have a seat at the table. Maybe you work on just enhancing that relationship to really understand, like, what is driving this, right? Because it takes a lot of effort, and it takes, it's hard to run counterculture. So obviously something's there where they're trying. What is it? Right? Maybe that's the, what would you say? That's an idea to try. Now, and then the other one is, the atheist. You would be looking at more apologetics arguments, right? Logical reasons why we believe in God, why it's rational to believe in God. We've studied that, which can also come in handy for lots of other things. And then, just the general, what do you say, agnostic or deist, right? Those are kind of the last three that Gary puts up as examples. Now, you may find, like Gary's on the West Coast. It could be here we find completely different common paths. Although I would say, for me, in my circle of influence, right, atheism, very common. I don't really see a whole lot of like deism or Hinduism. There is some of that, but not a whole lot. The God accusers, for sure, and also the cultural Christians would probably be what I would call my top three types of people that I interact with.
What was that third one?
Cultural Christians, people that say they're Christian, but really in everything that they do, they're no different than the world.
See, I have a daughter that's 47, and she's an atheist.
Mm-hmm.
Because her dad was.
Yeah.
But she's a nurse practitioner, she's PhD, all that stuff. She's an educated girl, but she has no common sense.
Yeah.
And it's sad. And
Yeah.
we can't communicate with them.
Yeah. And so,
They argue too much.
and part of the work that goes into it is, I think of it almost like boxing, right?
Yeah, it is.
You don't,
I get exhausted.
you have to take a lot of the punches, right?
Exhausted.
But all you have to do is land a couple good ones,
Oh, I know it.
right? And it's hard.
It
But
is
that's
hard. That's why
at the same time, this is the whole point of this.
That's why I like this section.
Yeah, that's the whole point of this, is trying to, how do we take the punches and how do we land just a couple good ones? That's really all we have to do. You land a good uppercut, somebody's going down.
When they
Right.
can't answer you back.
Now that's a
they don't say
terrible
anything.
analogy, but
They don't say anything then.
do not physically fight these people. I would not recommend that.
No.
So I can't get this up on the screen. It's not connecting for some reason. But moving on past that, these paths, and I think you kind of understand the idea. These are general paths. There could be more, right? You'll have to kind of figure it out. But once you interact with lots of people, you'll kind of see commonalities that they're going through. So prepare yourself for the most common ones you think you'll come across. The second session that we talked about was really about breaking through. Like, you feel like you're almost there, like like they're starting to get it, like you're starting to see the cracks form, and it's just like, how do we bust through, so to speak? And so Gary gave, I don't know why I'm pointing up there, I wanted it to be up there, a couple ideas or just things that may provide just a little bit extra leverage to kind of get them to move forward. And the first one he gives is anticipate them coming to the faith. Now, you may think of this as, well, that's nice, Gary, but that sounds kind of empty, right? And I could tell you, like, from personal experience, like, this really works. And what this is this is faith on your part. I remember when I was talking to my brother before he became a Christian, he was searching, and we went through this whole rigmarole. And he came to me, he was at my mom's house, and he came up, we was talking outside, and he just really seemed like he was close, like he was getting there, but he had like this one little hump to get over. And I said, Rob, why don't you do this? I said, you've analyzed all the evidence, right? You've researched all that you're going to research. How about you just ask God to reveal himself to you? And I said, but be prepared for an answer. Now, that was faith on my part because I don't know how this is going to go. But I just knew, like, God will show himself to you. It seems like you're really looking. I think he will. And not a couple weeks later, he came into the faith. Now, that's faith on our part. But you got to have faith to project that out. Okay, you're almost there. Why don't you just go for it? Like, ask God to reveal himself to you.
And you softened his feelings.
Yeah, you're just loosening it up. And
You made him humble.
yeah, try it. And I know I said that was because that's what it did for me. Right? God will totally reveal himself to you for those who are seeking.
That video, it was COVID, and he had Beginning of the World, What Starts, series of it. A lot of Christians shut it down, all this kind of stuff. Didn't want to hear what he had to say, but he had a very good introduction where everything began, how it began. He uses humor. I met him in person, but I've let people see the videos. No, they can't do this, they can't do that. But he's dead on what he's talking about.
Mhm.
He did his research. He was a scientist. He done all this stuff. He got busted because the IRS come in and shut him down. Oh, that shows you he's a bad person. Now, he was doing what God said for him to do, and he's still doing it. He runs evangelists down in Florida now. Dinosaurs, where they fit in the Bible, where this goes, and all like that. People just shut it out of their mind. It can't be no dinosaurs.
Mhm.
And yeah, he proves that, yeah, people have seen dinosaurs. People live with dinosaurs. I believe it. I know it because there's too many evidence.
Mhm.
He goes through the whole ordeal.
Yeah.
It's creation science is what it's all about. But when he got his thing started, it was a good thing for people to watch. But everybody shut it down because, oh, it couldn't be. You can't have dinosaurs living. You said he could be.
Yeah.
No, it wasn't even like that.
Well, and these, what let's call extraordinary claims, and let's not forget, the most extraordinary claim that we all claim as Christians is Jesus Christ rose from the dead, right? These things take mental energy, right, to kind of get over that hump, right? Because it doesn't make any sense, right? And yet, through faith, and we have evidences and all that stuff.
My ex-wife was from Germany.
Mm-hmm.
And we had friends that introduced us to those videos. And when she got out of Germany, and what they told her in Germany, well, she's learned from this, and she wasn't believing. She said, I never thought about things like that before.
Yeah.
And it brought her to Christianity.
Yeah. it's good to have these tools in your toolbox because you just never know what's going to resonate with people. So, anticipate people coming to the faith and seeing, what God's going to do for them. That's on you. That's not on them. That's on you. The second thing he brings up is contrasting doubt and faith. If you're going to lead your life in doubt, where's that going to go? And if you really think about it philosophically, Descartes tried to do this back in the 1400s, where he's like, well, what if, he was a philosopher, and he's like, okay, what can I actually trust in my life? And he goes through, he's like, can I even trust the world that I'm sensing, right? And coming into like what we nowadays more popularized like through the Matrix is, it could all be, he called it an evil demon. In the Matrix, you could think of it, you're in a vat somewhere. But an evil demon is tricking you into believing that everything, like this is real when it's not. And he came down to finally, the only thing he could actually trust is he exists. I think, therefore I am. And if you're going to doubt things, that's as far as you can get. That's the only thing you can say is, I exist. Right? If you really boil it down to its essence, all you can say is, I exist. I don't know where I am. I don't know if you're real. I don't know, if I look like this. I don't know anything, right? Because it could all be an illusion. Now, thankfully, most people don't actually think that. They may say that they do, but really we have faith about a lot of things, right? We've given examples of faith in airplanes and stuff like that, but really, there's no way we can know that the world is actually only 10 minutes old. It was just created 10 minutes ago with the appearance of age. But yet, right, we're rational, right? We think, well, it is what it is, right? You have some kind of baseline reality. The world is more than 10 minutes old, right? We do have memories of things in the past. And, if they're really on the philosophical level, you can go that route, right? And really, that's kind of my forte. I like to think about those things. But some people are, it's more emotional. Well, if I did believe that, then that would mean this and this and this, and it would mean that this loved one is in hell, and I like them, and I don't want to believe that, so it's not true. And that's more of an emotional route. So contrast. Where are you going to go in your life if you keep doubting things, versus where having faith in things really opens up your life, right? That's another, potential way to kind of grab that leverage and see where it goes. The third thing he asks is go experiential, right? Go try to experience God, right? What is God trying to reach out to you? If you think that, and this is kind of goes back to my brother, but kind of in general, if God loves you and wants you to come to know him, he's going to be reaching out to you. You just have to be perceptive to it. And, that's where pray. God, show yourself to me. Coming down from heaven, maybe it's something that only you can really quantify. And I've had those experiences. There are things in my life that have happened that I can only explain by God. But yet, if I told them to you, it probably wouldn't make much sense because you weren't there. It's not really evidence for anybody else, but it's evidence for me, right? It's an experience that I had that made sense to me in my context at that time in my life, and I'm pretty sure that we've all kind of had those experiences where something happened that was miraculous, right? Be like, oh yeah. And so, try to get them to go that. What is something you're going through? Try to tie those together. Can God show himself to you through that? And see where that goes. The fourth thing that he mentions is really having a discussion, like if they're so close and yet they keep like, they're standing at the door, but they're not knocking. Sometimes the best way is to ask them, like, what is holding you back?
Kinda like you did with your brother.
Yeah, what is holding you back? Are you afraid of what the truth may be? A lot of times it is. Are you afraid of, well, now I'm going to have to eat crow, right? Because I've said, all this time that God isn't real, and now he might be, right? I may say he is real. It may be it may just be like, well, my family's going to disown me. It could be something serious like that, right? I mean, you don't know. You don't know what is holding you back. And, go from there. Because, again, we're not assuming anything until they tell us. What is holding you back? And it may be something you don't expect. But at least you have a starting point to go from there. And then finally, it's just love, right? This is just build that relationship, right? See where it goes. If you've heard Gary talk, like these conversations are taking 4 months, 5 months, 9 months, right? I prayed for my brother for years, right? These are long-term commitments that we're making. And so all you can do is continue to love them. It may be many years. It could be, we want it to be in the next 10 minutes, but that's not typically how these things go. And so you're in it for the long haul. And so even if you're frustrated and be like, you've got everything that you need, all you can do is love them. And say, I'll be here for the next 7 months, the next 9 months, and be there. I mean, you really have to be there. You have to commit. And this is where the hard work is. And then lastly, he gives the charge, which I think, it's kind of the wrap-up series. But he makes the good point. We've said it before. All this is great. We've learned all this stuff. But until we put it into practice, doesn't mean a hill of beans. So you've been thinking about these things. You've been thinking about your friends. I'm sure you've had some people in your mind as we're going through this. Put this stuff into practice. Put it into practice. And then as we, expand our ministries here at the church, I keep pointing to this building because I think it's going to be great. We've also got youth. There's a lot of potential here as well. But again, we don't want to, if we're outreaching, it's in the title, it's people outside of this church. And there are people that God has placed in your life that he has not placed in my life. And he's not placed in Pastor Kenny's life. Only you can reach them. And so I would greatly encourage you to take advantage of this training, these sessions that we've been through, and put it into practice. Put it in practice with, your sister that you don't really understand. And it's hard, and it's frustrating. I get it. I get it. Those people that you work with for years and years that, seem to have a problem but you can't really get to. Work with them. Walk alongside them and lead them, right, if you can, to Christ. And try to overcome those obstacles with them.
When I look at it, people won't give Christianity a chance and learn Jesus who he is. I look at people with problems, some high blood pressure medicine and diabetes, and diabetics and their high blood pressure. They tell you what gives them high blood pressure. They tell you what they need to be doing, but they still do it because they say the medicine's going to take care of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So instead of trying to eliminate the medicine that's costing you a lot of money and still giving you a lot of problems, you can't cut back on what you do.
Yeah.
I mean, it's alcoholism, it's with everything. It's something that you want and you crave so bad that you can't give it up.
Mm-hmm.
You want something else to take care of.
And you have to get to where you want to give it up. But that's the part where the Holy Spirit comes in. We are leading them to Christ, but the Holy Spirit does a work too.
You eat things that don't taste good, you eat things that do taste good. Still, if that food makes you sick, do you want to keep eating? If it's something that, your system don't work, you can't eat it, you don't want it.
Mm-hmm.
Why
temporary pleasure
Then I
sometimes
go back.
overrides.
How many times do you fall off a cliff before you break your neck? It's just
I wouldn't imagine too many times, Brian.
not too many times.
Yeah, but I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying. Most people that come out of like lung transplants because they have like lung cancer from smoking continue to smoke afterward. Yep, it's true. It's true. But that's where the Holy Spirit comes in, because that just shows the nature of human beings, right? We are self-destructive, really. The only one that can save us is Christ. Yeah. So it's a lot to really, this is more hypothetical. I would hope that you would go out and work with your friends or your colleagues or people in your sphere of influence and just, talk with them, get to know them, be genuine, and see, like, there are lots of people that need Christ. We can go out through the county. There's 24,000 people in this county. How many people are in churches? Maybe 7,000. Now you do the math, right? 24 minus 7, and that's a big chunk of people that have decided that either they don't want God or God's not important. And just think about it. Now, I get it, right? That's generals. Some people have to work, some people are called. I get that, right? I totally get that. But in general,
Most families, like I said, I know people that don't want to go to church. They don't call all the churches, all they want is their money.
yep,
All they want is their money.
yep, I get that. Money. And just tell them, hey, you know what? Don't give us any money. We're good without your money. Because I'd rather you want to give, not just your money, your time, but Jesus wants you to give too. And he wants everything. And that's hard for people to really kind of wrap their head around. Right? Jesus wants it all. He wants your life. And he's going to help you change it. And once you realize that the way you're going is not going to get you anywhere, then it makes a whole lot easier sense. Because the way you're going now with your current good life is going to lead to damnation, really. But that's getting into the gospel. So, oh. The governor's off the trucks? Oh. Well, yeah, and it's hard. It's hard. Well, we're out of time, so let's pray, and we'll continue on to our worship service. Father, thank you for this opportunity to come and study your word and this lesson from Gary Comer on reaching people for you through a relational way, and just all the wisdom that he's imparted to us from his time in the ministry and reaching out to people. I pray that we'll take these lessons and apply them in our lives to